So, hello everyone. Welcome to another installment of Marriage Alive. And today, we, the Hodges, are going to have a discussion on the very important topic, finances in marriage.
I am Danielle, and my background in terms of work has been in investment analysis, financial risk analysis of investment portfolios, and regulatory compliance.
Okay, and I am Kellan. I have a background in the oil and gas industry for roughly 10 years. So off the bat, you can see that she is the financial guru in this relationship. So getting to our topic now. The topic of finance is, for obvious reasons, a really important one, right? And in marriage, it's important to approach this topic in particular with some really good communication skills. And I would say also with an open mind, right? So we'll get into some questions now. So the first question we'll discuss is, do all banks have the feature that allows you to have a beneficiary for your account?
Okay, so for most regular savings and checkings account, no, most commercial banks do not allow you to have a beneficiary to the account. What they do allow, some of them I should say, is what they do allow is for you to have a joint account set up in such a way that you are able to withdraw on your own if you want, and then the other person has to, the both of you will have to be there to make the withdrawal. So upon your death, then ultimately the other person would become the beneficiary to the account, so to speak. If, however, you have a mutual fund account set up at the bank, so some banks offer mutual fund, most banks offer mutual fund products, you are allowed to have a beneficiary to those type of accounts.
Okay.
Okay, so the next question that was submitted was, how does one manage money well and still enjoy life now, especially with a spouse who is a spender?
So this is a very pertinent topic. It could be a touchy one as well. But as I said before, these kind of discussions really need good communication skills. So the first thing I would say is that each party, each person in this marriage needs to approach this conversation with a sense of self-awareness. So before getting into the conversation, have some time to do some introspection and be real with yourself. Know if spending is a problem for you, or if you think that you have a good handle on your spending. And why this topic could be contentious as well is because each person has generally different values or methods of managing their finances, and it stems a lot from past experiences or what you would have observed in your household growing up, how your parents would have managed their money. So just remember, in this marriage, you would have two persons coming together, possibly with totally different backgrounds, and each person has their sense of, okay, what is right or what is wrong. So I'd say it's important to, one, approach it with an open mind, a listening ear as well. So be willing to listen to the other person's point of view in terms of when they express what things are of value to them, as well as what methods they would want to employ in order to manage their money, right? And then it's important as a couple now to have that joint discussion as to what do we as a couple value and how would we want to manage our finances together.
Yeah, so the only thing I would add to what Kellan has said is that I think it's really important in having the discussion to talk about the key, the big ticket things, the big important things that you all have as financial goals for yourselves, for the marriage, for the relationship, for the household, and try to come to an agreement on those things so that you know you're budgeting for those things. I think it's also important to have a rainy day fund. I think also if the person has a serious problem with spending, you need to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes, depending on how severe the problem is, it might require some outside intervention, whether it's a therapist, a counselor, something of the sort. One thing I would say I would not encourage is having secret accounts or hidden accounts, because I think that any type of secrets in a marriage is dangerous. But it is important to live within your means, budget to have fun as well. A saying that I love to say is live within your means or live without your needs. So, yeah.
Good point there. So the next question that we'll deal with is, how does a couple manage or invest large sums of money? Right? So for this one, I'll defer to the financial guru.
All right. So how large sums of money is invested will look very different for every person, every couple, because it largely depends on your financial goals. So our financial goals might look very different from another couple's financial goals. Both long-term and short-term financial goals need to be taken into consideration. Another thing that's very important to consider is your risk appetite. So you need to consider both your ability to take risk and your willingness to take risk. Because you might be able to take a certain amount of risk based on your wealth, but you may not be willing to take that amount of risk, right? So those are the two main things that you take into consideration before deciding on what you invest in. So the next step is selecting the type of assets that you want to invest in. So you can invest in stocks. Now stocks would include things like, you can invest in equity, and equity would include things like stocks. You can invest in fixed income instruments, and that would include things like bonds, treasury bills. You could also invest in alternative investments, and that would include things like real estate and hedge funds. Now, the difference, you want to ensure that your portfolio is very diversified to reduce the overall risk of your portfolio. And the different percentages that you apply to the different asset classes, so determining how much you're going to invest in, say, equity, or how much you're going to invest in bonds, is largely dependent on your goals and your risk appetite. So if you want more growth in your funds, so you want what is known as capital appreciation, then you tend to invest more in stocks. You have a higher weighting to equity type instruments. If your goal is more capital preservation, so you're preserving what you have, but you're still getting a little income coming in from time to time, whether it's every quarter or whatever the case may be, then you tend to invest more in bonds, right? You have a heavier weighting to fixed income instruments. There are also different financial institutions that offer products that are known as mutual fund accounts. And a mutual fund basically pools a large sum of money from different investors, and they would have a professional who would manage these funds and invest it in things like bonds, equity, and ensure that you have a diversified product that you can invest in, right? If you decide to invest on your own, I would recommend choosing companies with strong growth prospects. I think also it's important, especially in a time like this when we're in a recession, to choose companies that are known to provide products that we call consumer staples. And consumer staples is basically things that consumers need, the average person needs on a daily basis. So think about groceries, think about pharmaceuticals, think about companies that provide hygiene products. Regardless of what is going on in the economy, in the world, globally, most times these companies perform very well, right? Also, if you do decide to invest on your own, you may want to know, how do you go about doing this? So you would need to open a brokerage account. Now, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have 6 different companies that, 6 different brokerage firms that you can open a brokerage account with. and you can check the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange website to see those 6 different companies and decide which one you would want to go with. I would also advise visiting a financial advisor who would assist in tailoring a portfolio, in creating a portfolio, I should say, that is very tailored to your specific needs as an individual and as a couple.
Okay. So you offer these kind of services?
No, I'm not a financial advisor.
I just had to ask. I know you're all thinking about it.
All right, so the final question that we got was, how do couples plan best for retirement and leaving an inheritance for their children?
So I would kick things off and I would say, I think the first step in planning for retirement is having a vision as to what you would like your retirement to be like. For some people, it might be rocking back with a house with no mortgage to pay, and you might be happy and content with a little kitchen garden and, you know, just checking friends. On the other hand, somebody else for retirement might want to travel the world. Well, when things open up, of course. So it needs to start with a vision of what you want your retirement to look like, and then you would have an idea or be able to quantify in terms of dollars and cents what you might need in order to live that kind of retirement that you would want. Yeah? And again, well, Daniel, I guess you could give a little more tips about the nitty-gritty in terms of the planning aspect of it.
Okay, sure. So, so first of all, it's never too early to start planning for retirement. Actually, the earlier you start, the better. If you could start as soon as you start working, then the better.
I think I would disagree. I would say from the time you start to get an allowance from your parents, even if you're in your parents' house, start planning for retirement.
So, yes, so start planning very early, right? So your current age, your expected age of retirement, and also your desired spending habits, the lifestyle that you want to have at retirement will determine how much you should save towards retirement. So it's important to know that your expenses will change over time. Expenses will change as you retire. There are some expenses that will increase, while there are those that will decrease. So for instance, mortgage, it is hoped that by that time you would have paid off your mortgage, so you wouldn't have to pay those monthly installments anymore. So that is an expense that would likely decrease. However, health expenses might increase as your health deteriorates. As Kellen would have mentioned before, you might want to travel more during that time. So that is an expense that might increase. So try to get an idea of what your expenses or what lifestyle you want to have upon retirement. And then you think about the different income that you would have at retirement. So the income that you would have at retirement, a lot of companies offer pension plans. So you might have a pension coming in from your company, the company that you would have worked for. There are some companies, of course, not every company has a pension plan. There are some persons that get gratuity, and gratuity really should be treated as pension. So you can open a separate, your own personal pension fund and pension fund account, and you invest that gratuity. You don't treat that gratuity like bonus. You don't treat party time, fix out the house. That is to be treated like pension and to be invested in a pension account. So, you know, taking that into consideration. Even if your company has a pension plan, that may not be enough to support the type of lifestyle that you want to have upon retirement. So it still is important to invest and have your own pension fund account. Also, you have annuities that you can have with different, like an insurance company. And you could also create your own portfolio, so your own investment portfolio that is geared towards retirement, so something that is more long term. And the question also asks about leaving an inheritance for children. So if you want your portfolio to last multiple generations, or the next generation, you think long term, you think growth, you think it's what is known as a laddered portfolio, which is basically or laddered bonds, which is basically bonds with different maturities, right? So those are the things that you want to take into consideration when saving or planning for retirement. Also, there is some local banks have a retirement calculator on their website. So you can check their websites, and those websites use your current age, your savings plan, and it gives you an estimate of how your investment would grow at your target retirement age, right? So we could probably delve into the next part of the question, which dealt with leaving an inheritance for your children. I don't know if Callan wants to start with that.
So I think when we hear the word or hear the term leaving an inheritance for your children, many times our mind go towards the material or the tangible things first. But I would like to start with the intangibles. So I think you can't go wrong by investing in your child's education. So that way, you equip them with some of the tools necessary such that they have a better chance of starting a career that could help them in the long term have the kind of lifestyle that they would want. Aside from that, I would also say it's important to invest in knowledge about finances. So teach your children good financial practices. So some of this, you don't need to be a financial guru to do this, but think about your personal experiences as well. A number of us have both good and bad experiences that we could learn from. Pass on these lessons to your children so that they would be better able to manage whatever money or assets come into their hands. Because at the end of the day, a child could eventually have a career where they earn $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 per month, and if they have poor financial management skills, they could be in no better position than somebody who is earning $2,000 per month. So that financial knowledge is really important. And then I would say you look at the tangibles. So in Trinidad and Tobago especially, we know that land is generally a very good investment because the price of land generally just goes up over time. So some people might be wondering, okay, land in the prime locations right now are too expensive for me to afford. If you can't afford these pieces of land in prime locations, I would suggest, thinking ahead, using some level of foresight. So there might be pieces of land available now at reasonable prices, but you look at the development around. If there are signs that over time, in 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, this area could be more developed and hence the price of the land would appreciate significantly, this might be something that you want to invest in. It would cost you less now, but by the time your child is ready to use that for whatever purposes, it might be worth sometimes 2 or 3 times the value. So I'd say these are things that you could really look at. Another thing I would say is getting a will. So we recently got some advice that from the time you have some form of asset, it could be a parrot and a stick, it could be a bicycle. Once you have any type of asset, it's good to start a will from early, and you could put your children on this will. Therefore, they would be able to benefit from any of the assets that you as a couple would have acquired over the course of your marriage.
Yeah. I agree. The only thing I would add to what Callan said is important. When he spoke about land, so ensure that you get a lawyer involved in the land search process, because you don't want to end up in a situation where, you know, it have a lot of scams all over the place. So you don't want to end up in a situation where the land is not really theirs. True. And so the land, you know, you end up wasting your money. And also you could have your children, as you all could decide if you all want to have accounts where the children are beneficiaries on the accounts. Right. So those are other things that some of the things that, you know, you can do as well.
Right. So thanks for listening. Thanks for the opportunity to be part of this discussion. I know we didn't touch on everything else out there, but feel free to continue the conversation in the comments. So thanks, and hopefully this was beneficial to you all.
Bye.